Hey everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel, and I'm so excited to do my October wrap up with you guys today. I am off to the side here, so I have room to put up book covers, much like I did last time. So you guys are like, what's she doing on the side? That would be why it's easier to put book covers up here for you guys to see my books. But I read a lot of books for the month of October, so we're going to be here for a minute. I read as many books for the second half of the month as I did for the first half of the month. I'm not joking. So prepare yourselves. It's going to be kind of a long video, but I have some really good books for this last half of the month. So I'm excited to talk about them. Before I jump into that, just a reminder, if you haven't seen my update video from yesterday, that the month of November is going to be a little bit less booktube content. You'll see some more writing content because I am participating in NaNoWriMo this year and I am hosting several virtual write-ins. So if you're like, what's up with all the writing stuff? That would be why. Go check out my last video update and it will provide more details for you guys. But for right now, we're going to talk about all the books I read in October. I read a total of 30 books in the month of October, which is the most books I have ever read in one month in a long time. I was averaging like a good book a day, and that's crazy to me. But the reason I read so many this month is for a couple of reasons. First of all, I was listening to a lot of audiobooks. So I was able to get through quite a few books just from listening on audio. Also, I had a little bit more free time in the evening because I was transitioning from my old job to my new job, which my new job was a lot of like training videos and things, but not actually taking on hotels yet, which meant I wasn't coming home with work to do. So I would come home at the end of the day and actually have time to like sit down and read a book. So that helped. And then also I read some shorter books this month. So I had quite a few books that were shorter than what I would typically read. So combined with more time, more audiobooks, and a few shorter books in the mix, it just meant that I read a ton of books this month. So 30 books for the month of October. Now the first 15 books I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. If you want to hear about those in more detail, you can click up here wherever I link it to, and you can go back and watch the first 15 books a month, but for right now, we're going to just do the last half of the month. So let's get going with book 16. As always, I have my notes to the side, so if you are noticing me looking, that's why. So book 16 was Fallen King by Giana Darling, and I can't give you a whole lot of details about this book, unfortunately. I did give this one 4 stars. It's not a book, it's actually a like short story / novella that takes place after the book After the Fall, and that's about about halfway through the Fallen Men series with Giana Darling, and there's major spoilers in this novella. It is a very good novella. I think if you are a fan of the series, it would absolutely be a story that you want to read and check out. It brings a lot of closure to a major storyline in the series, but again, I can't give you many details because it will majorly ruin certain points of that series. But I will say that I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Book number 17 is Ruthless Prince by Faith Summers, and I think it's Khardine Gray. I might be saying the name wrong, I'm sorry, but it's Khardine Gray. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. This is a story of Emilia and Massimo, and it is a mafia romance. So it's a trope I've seen a million times before. In this book, Massimo basically takes Emilia as like a payoff for a debt that her father owes him. He's obviously like a part of the mafia, and the father owes a debt, so he takes the daughter in the place of the debt, and he treats her pretty cruelly at the beginning, but then slowly she kind of chips away at his rough edges and they slowly fall in love. There's a lot of twists and turns in this book, and you're not quite sure when you get to know his character. Is he the good guy? Is he the bad guy? And you find out some things about her father that you weren't expecting. And so even though you think that like Massimo is this really bad guy because he kidnapped her, you actually find out that like maybe there's more to the story and he's not the bad guy you think he is. So it's not that it wasn't an uninteresting book. It was a good book, but it's also a trope I've seen done like how many times in the mafia romances do we see this same trope? And in fact, there are other books on this list with the same exact trope that I think are just done a little bit better. So it's not that it was a bad book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's enjoyable. It just wasn't the most original version of this trope that I've ever seen. So it was just okay to me. Book number 18 was a surprise to me in a lot of ways. This was Savage Tracker by Maggie Cole. It is book number, number 5 in her Mafia Wars story. And I gave this one 4.5 stars. It came very close to being a 5-star, but it was a hard book for me to get through, and I'll tell you why. So Maggie, in all of the books previous in the series, has hinted at a little bit of like BDSM type things, but in most of the books leading up to this, it's sort of hinted at, or it's very light. In this book, it's like full-fledged, it's there. And as you guys know, I'm not really into that sort of stuff. I'm a pretty like vanilla Christian white girl kind of thing going on here. So I don't read a lot of that like really kinky stuff, and I don't enjoy it. But this book, I still gave 4.5 stars to, because it is one of the best books I've seen in dealing with trauma, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it wasn't used in like a nasty way. It was used in like a helping someone heal from trauma kind of way. So the story is about a Brecht and a Selena. And Selena you meet in, I can't remember the name of her, but a couple books back. And the one who's the lawyer, what's the woman's name I'm drawing a blank, but the woman who's the lawyer a few books back. And she helps Selena get out of this really, really abusive marriage where the man was basically keeping her in a non-consensual master-slave relationship where she was being horribly abused and degraded and not being treated right. And her only experience really with like relationships and with like sexual intimacy is with this really horrible master-slave relationship that was totally non-consensual. So here she is, she's finally out of this divorce, and Obrecht has been kind of assigned, I'm probably saying his name wrong, but he's been assigned in the couple books back to kind of watch over her. He lives in the same apartment complex as her, and even though he's not officially her bodyguard, he's also being asked by the family to watch over her to make sure she's safe, because she has this crazy ex who will do anything to get her back, and they're worried that she might be harmed because of the amount of abuse that he bestowed upon her. So during this process, they get to know each other. He kind of keeps tabs on her. And one day she's super confused about everything that she's been through in her life. So she decides to go to like this sex club to experience some of the things that happened to her in a marriage from a different point of view. She wants to like experiment and see what it's all about, because she realizes that the relationship I had with my ex-husband isn't right. But then Obrecht is like, she doesn't know what she's doing. What she's doing is dangerous. She doesn't know anything about this lifestyle, not really, because her ex-husband didn't explain anything to her. So he ends up deciding to teach her about what that lifestyle is. And again, I'm not into all of that, but some of the scenes in this book are absolutely heartbreaking. For example, there's a scene where she makes him dinner and feeds him, sets the table for him, has all the dinner out on the table, and all of a sudden she grabs a dog bowl and gets on her hands and knees with the food in a dog bowl. And he looks at her and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, my other master would make me eat on the floor like a dog. And he looks at her like, excuse me? So I don't know, it's almost used as like a healing technique for her. So it's not like nasty. It's more about him like helping her through this past trauma and to realize that like what you were involved in was not right. This is what this actually is, and you were being abused. And so watching her kind of have to deal with getting past all the past trauma, and then he has his own personal trauma he's trying to deal with, and watching the two of them fall in love, it was really, really good. I didn't give it 5 stars just because I'm not into all of that. But I really love the story, so I couldn't mark it down. And if you took out all the kinky stuff, like it would absolutely be a 5-star book for me. So I loved this one. It was really, really good. And I think I've only got like a couple more books in the Mafia Wars series to go. So I'm getting there. Getting there. Book number 19 is Dangerous Vow by S.R. Jones. This is another Mafia romance, and I gave this one 3 stars. This is another one that like I've seen the trope done before, and also I didn't like the way it ended. So unfortunately I couldn't give it any more stars than that. But in this book you have Giovanni and Amelia. And Giovanni invites Amelia to come to Italy to act as his librarian. He's bought this like rundown palace type mansion thing that has a rundown library, and he wants to put all of the books in order. So he uses this as like a ploy to get her over to Italy to take care of his library. But in actuality, he's plotting to have her come to Italy to fall in love with him and marry him as a revenge act against her family. Apparently her father or grandfather or somebody, I don't remember because it's been a while, like did something against his family, and so he wants to get back at them and steal their wealth by making her fall in love with him and basically taking them for everything they have. But he ends up developing feelings for her, so you see like them change, and then she finds out why he really had her come over, but then it ends in a cliffhanger. And I was like, I hate cliffhangers. I don't think they're necessary, but also I didn't feel like I liked the characters enough to really constitute wanting to read the second book. So I have no idea how it ends because I didn't read the second book, and I really kind of don't want to. So 3 stars for that one. Book number 20 was the third book in the Underworld Kings series. This is that series that has like 17 or 18 books out, and they're all by different authors, but take place in the same world. And you guys, I finally figured it out. This book, I finally figured out what it is that is tying the books together. They all take place in a city called Desolation? I think it's Desolation. It's the city that's in common. So all the books feature this city, whether it be at a certain point in the book, maybe that's the main scene of the book, whatever, they all take place in this city. That's how they're all connected. I finally figured it out. Anyway, in this book, you have Galina and Arlo. Galina's on the run from her, like the kind of the Russian Bratva Mafia type people. Somebody. She's on the run because her father owed a debt to the Mafia, and in order to pay off his debt, he sells her to the Mafia to sell her off as like a sex slave and to repay his debt in that way. So she takes off on a run to escape them, ends up in Dissolution, whatever the name of the city is, and is undercover there with a fake name and is waitressing. And Arlo also works for a different branch of the Russian Bratva, and he is kind of like their fixer or cleaner. So basically when they take someone out, he cleans up their mess so that they don't get caught by the cops. And he has a pretty dark character and has a lot of past trauma and hurt, which is why he does the job he does. And really the only bright spot of his day is going to this diner and being served by Galina, and he immediately is taken by her and is attracted by her. So it's really about the two of them kind of learning each other's secrets and falling in love, and then figuring out how to get her out of this people that are chasing her because they wanted to sell her into sex slavery and all this. It was okay. It's a great premise, but I didn't really feel like there was a whole lot of chemistry between the two main characters. So far, I'm only like 5 books in, I think, to this series, and it's been very hit or miss, but there's a lot of books and a lot of authors, so I'm still going to keep going. But this particular book, I gave 3 stars to. Book number 21 was a surprise for me. So y'all know I'm obsessed with Beauty and the Beast retellings. So of course I had to read a book that was called Beauty and the Beast. It's called Beauty and the Beast by Georgia Le Carre, and I gave this one 5 stars. This one surprised me, super surprised me. It's another Mafia romance. Is anyone shocked by this? Not me. Anyway, you have Skye who's losing her father to cancer, and there's treatment that he needs that the family cannot afford. So but prior to the book starting, she ends up making this really shady deal with some guy who has ties to the Mafia that basically says, like, you're beautiful, be my escort. You know what I mean? For a month, and if you do this, then I will pay your father's bills, some of his medical bills. But he ends up being a scumbag. He screws her out of the original agreement. He's not paying things like he's supposed to pay, and she's being mistreated. So one day he takes her to some kind of charity event that all the Mafia bigwigs are at, trying to like do shady money deals under the table. And while she's there, she meets Luca, and Luca can see that she's being mistreated and that this guy is a total scumbag, and he feels bad for her. So he decides to basically buy her from him and to also do a month-long deal. And in exchange, that he'll pay all of her father's medical bills. And he is a very much damaged hero type. Obviously, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Everyone thinks he's beastly because he's mean. He has scars on his face from Mafia fights and Mafia things that have happened. He's got scars. He is very angry, and everyone calls him a beast of a man. Like, he's just super scared. People are scared of him. He's unlikable. But in this book, you watch the two of them fall in love. And I think the reason I liked this book so much is I love a damaged hero, first of all. But I also think that the scenario that they make this totally crazy storyline super believable. And you see Luca constantly battle his emotions, and I'm not going to ruin anything, but there's reasons why he is the way he is and why he's as closed off to emotions as he is. So watching her fall in love with him try to come to terms with it. He messes up quite a few times because he doesn't know how to relate to other people. It just was really good story, and I absolutely loved it. It actually made me cry a few times. Like, she really gets your emotions going in this book. This was a surprise one. I got this one it was advertised on a Facebook ad, and it was free on Kindle Unlimited. And I wasn't expecting it to be great, but I was like, wow, this one really kind of blew me out of the water. I wasn't expecting this one to be as good as it was. So 5 stars for Beauty and the Beast by Georgia Le Carre. The next 2 books were book 5 and book 6 from Sophie Lark's Underworld series. Y'all know I'm still trying to get through that series. I am almost done. I have 2 more books left in here after this, when I'm actually reading the 7th book currently. So hopefully in the month of November, I will finally finish the Underworld series because I love Sophie, and it's been interesting trying to get through this series. So book number 22 was Anton by Sophie Lark, of course. This is the story of Anton and Violet. I gave this one 5 stars. I loved this one. This was one of my favorite books in the entire Underworld series so far. So Violet, you know from Roman's book. If you remember Roman from a few books back, Violet is his half sister that the father left the Mafia businesses to, and they're supposed to work on these businesses and run them together. Well, this is the book where Violet meets Roman and meets her father. So the book starts off with Violet being a poor musician working in London, basically making a living off of playing bars and any place else she can play live music. She has a roommate. They're barely getting by, but she loves music and she's happy in her life. She's lonely, but she's happy, and she's just getting by the best that she can. Well, one night the Russian Mafia is in town for some kind of meeting, and she's playing the bar that she always plays. And while she's there, she notices that this older man, who's obviously part of the Russian Mafia, is watching her very intently and like wants to talk to her after the show, and she thinks it's really weird. But it later comes out that this older man was taken by her, and especially by her guitar and everything, because he's actually her father. And she doesn't know this at the time, and he kind of suspects it, but they prove it with the DNA test that basically several years earlier, because this meeting of the Russian Mafia is held every 10 years. And during one of those times, he had a couple-week relationship with Violet's mother. And after meeting her, seeing the guitar, which actually belonged to him during that relationship, because it was passed down to her from her mother, long story short, she finds out that's her father. So this is the story of her going to Paris to get to know her father. And she meets Roman, who's her half-brother. And while she's there, she meets Anton, who is like a soldier, I think, of her father's. And it's all about her learning about like the Russian Mafia, because she doesn't know anything about it, and all of the kind of family building and relationship building. And it's a little bit of a forbidden romance because of the rankings of the Bratva. Like, she's expected to marry a person of rank in the Bratva, and Anton is considered lower ranked. So technically they shouldn't be allowed to be together, but they love each other. And so there's a little bit of that like forbidden romance, we can't be together. I loved this one, and I loved her character in Roman's book, so I was really excited to get her backstory. So I'm so glad Sophie gave us this. I thought it was so good. And then I followed up with book 23, which again is the 6th book, called Nikolai, also by Sophie Lark, of course. And this one I gave 5 stars to as well. This is a story of Nadia and Nikolai. And Nadia is part of the Russian Bratva and is engaged to be married to someone that it's an arranged marriage. He also has Mafia ties. She doesn't love him. He doesn't love her. They're engaged because they're expected to be engaged. It's arranged. You gotta do what you gotta do when you are a Russian Mafia princess, right? So she is just dealing, it is what it is. She's like, okay, I'll marry him. I don't like him. But then her mother passes away, and she finds a long lost diary of her mother's, and about when her mom's like, I think in college at the time. And she decides that she wants to go back to Russia to learn more about her mother. So a lot of this book is about her translating this diary because she doesn't speak Russian. So she's translating this diary so she can read about what her mother wrote about. And her mother had a secret romance back then. So it's trying to figure out like what happened with this romance. Why did my mother not end up with this person that she loved so much in this diary? While she's doing all of this, she meets Nikolai, who is from a rival Russian Bratva family. The two families fight. They don't get along. So you have her uncovering this mystery of her mother's love and falling in love with an enemy, and at the same time trying to kind of determine through all the things that she's reading about her mother's past and the hurt that her mother went through, trying to decide like, is it worth, like, is loving Nikolai worth the trouble that's going to come with it? I really loved this one also. This one was 5 stars. Some of the earlier books in the Underworld series were hit or miss for me, but these last couple books have just been phenomenal. All right, book number 24 was called Off Limits by M.S. Parker. This one is, okay, this one was totally different, kind of, than what I'm used to. So the hero is Scottish. His name is Alec, and the girl's name is Lumen, which I thought was kind of a weird name. I've not heard the name Lumen before. I thought it was interesting. But anyways, they first meet when he goes to a massage parlor that's recommended by a friend that gives happy endings. And the problem is he misunderstood the friend's name for the massage parlor. So when he meets her, he thinks that like he can ask her for things off of the secret menu. And she's like, what are you talking about? The secret list of services I call a secret menu. What do you mean secret list of services? The services are listed on the wall. And he's like, no, I mean, the secret list of services. And she's like, we don't do that here. And so she's super offended and it's like, oh, you need to get out, you need to leave. And he feels like a total jerk. So he decides to go back and apologize and be like, I'm so sorry. I misunderstood the name. My friend actually meant this place. I didn't mean to, be disrespectful and whatnot. And he's super embarrassed and so is she. But then, they meet several other times around the city. They bump into each other at like a store and they bump into each other at different places. And then the final time they bump into each other, she actually quits her job at the massage parlor and takes her first teaching job. And lo and behold, she ends up being his daughter's like 3rd grade teacher, I think it is. Was it 3rd grade? I can't remember what grade she was in, but anyway, ends up being his daughter's teacher. And so that's really awkward at first, but then the two of them start up a relationship. And I think the thing that bothered me with this particular book, it was cute and I liked it, but it ends in happy for now. And there's actually a second book that follows this couple later on in their relationship. So I'm assuming that they have a happily ever after in the second book. I have not read the second book yet. I think I might because I think it's on audiobook, but it's kind of more of like a happy for now instead of a happily ever after sort of feeling. And I don't usually love that, but that's okay. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I think it was good audiobook. So, I mean, if you want something, it was also a short audiobook. So if you're wanting something that's kind of short and easy to get through, check it out. But I think I definitely need to read the next book to really get a full picture of that relationship. We're down to the last 5, guys. Number 25 is book number 3. Is it book number 3 or book number 4? I think it's book number 3 in the Underworld Kings. Might be wrong. It's Tears of Salvation by Michelle Hurd. I actually gave this one 4 stars. This one was way better. I've never read anything by Michelle Hurd, but now I really want to read more from her because I really liked this book. So in this book, you have Isabella and Alexei, and they first meet each other when she crashes a party at his club. Undercover, they're wearing masks and stuff, so they don't know who each other are. And they have a one-night stand in a dark corner of the club, and she asks him, what's your name? And he tells her, the devil. And then they have their moment and she leaves and they never see each other again, or so she thinks. So the way it goes is that she is the daughter of a rival branch of the, like it's a mafia or cartel. I think she might have been part of the cartel, but long story short, her mother is an owner of like a sex slave business. She actually gets shipments of girls and sells them off to the people who sell them into sex slavery, which Isabella is 100% against. And so she decides to, during this next encounter, decides that she is going to stop the shipment from happening. She's done this several times in the past, and she ends up freeing these girls and taking them back to their families so that they're not sold into sex slavery. And then she meets Alexei the second time because he is basically following her to find out what her involvement in this is, because he's against sex slavery as well. And she gets hurt and loses her memory. Well, he's intrigued by her, so he ends up going after she loses her memory and like trying to convince her that they love each other and that they were engaged to be married and they have this relationship and all of this. And she obviously believes it because she has amnesia, but as all amnesia tropes go, things turn very south when her memory comes back and she realizes that Alexei has been lying to her. So again, this is an amnesia trope. It's kind of an enemies to lovers type thing, but I really did enjoy this. I think Michelle Hurd has a great way of, what's the word I'm looking for? Explaining things and like getting the emotion across of the people that she's writing about and her characters and whatnot. So I really like her, and I actually want to check out some more books by her because I thought this is one of the best Underworld Kings books that I've read so far. I can't remember if this is book 3 or book 4. Not sure, but it's part of the Underworld Kings series. And then book number 26 was a library book. And I don't know when this book was released because I literally just picked it up from the library. It was on the fancy book rack and it looked pretty, so I picked it up. It's called When a Duke Loves a Governess by Olivia Drake. I gave this one 4 stars. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is not the most inventive trope. Okay, like how many times have you done the governess falls in love with the duke? I mean, it's a million historical romances with this trope. The difference is I really liked the characters. So in this, you have Tessa James, who works in like a dressmaker's seamstress type shop. And she overhears the patrons talking about the Duke of Carlin is looking for another governess because he's got this crazy daughter who like drives all the governesses away. And so he's looking for another governess, and she is actually working in the city because she's trying to find her biological father. Her mother passed away and gave her this beautiful necklace with a family crest on it and told her to find her father. And she knows by the family crest on the necklace that he's a member of nobility. So she's trying to find out who this crest belongs to so she can figure out who her father is. And the only way she knows how to do that is she has to be around people who are upper class, and obviously at the dressmaker shop she sees some upper class women but not a lot. So when she hears that the Duke is looking for a governess, she decides to go undercover and to pretend to be a governess so that she has access to his parties and the people he hangs out with, and can hopefully find who her biological father is. So again, this is not the most inventive trope. It literally, she gets the job as governess. You have these cute scenes with her and the daughter. She teaches him to be closer to his daughter, and the two of them fall in love. So, and then at the end of the book, obviously she figures out who her biological family is. So it's not, I mean, I've seen this done a million times, but I really enjoyed the characters. I think this one was very well written. I like Olivia Drake. There's not very many books by Olivia Drake that I don't like. So I gave this one 4 stars. This was a great book. And the last 4 books I read, so 27, 28, 29, and 30, were all part of a series called the Krave of Everton series. Now, I don't remember who originally recommended these books to me. I've had a couple friends of mine who have read these. I was laughing actually because I just watched one of, I'm behind on BookTube. I think it was Jen from the Book Refuge, and I was laughing because she just read these. I have a friend who's not on BookTube who actually just read these like a week before I did. I saw someone on TikTok recommend these, somebody who loves sci-fi romance, and then I've seen a couple other booktubers now mention these. So I don't know what has kind of caused these books to sort of like be on the forefront, but I know so many people who have read these Krave of Everton books now, and they're by Zoey Draven, and I loved these. I gave every single book, there's 4 books, I gave them all 5 stars. Like, I was not expecting this because I don't like sci-fi, I don't like fantasy, I don't like blue people. Like, that's just not who I am. I'm not into all of that, but you guys, this was really well written series. I was super, super impressed. Okay, so to try to explain the world to you before I jump into each of the four books individually. So this is a futuristic world where the Earth no longer exists and a lot of other planets have been destroyed and no longer exist. You have humans interacting with aliens, all different types of beings on all different types of planets. You're able to travel pretty quickly through space via spaceships, so it's not uncommon to visit other colonies, as they call them, and other planets. And, you know, basically the whole world is very futuristic, Star Trek-ish kind of thing. It's just a normal sci-fi futuristic kind of world. And in this particular world, you have Eve, who is, for the first book, who is, kind of starts off the series for you, who is a human living on a planet called Everton. And on Everton, there are these beings called Kraves, which are from a planet that was destroyed in some kind of war, from what I understand. And the Krave are known because they are unique species. They're actually blue. Their skin's blue, which is kind of funny. There's lots of really neat things about them. And one of the things that makes them so popular is they are known for, how do I say this nicely? Because you know, I have Christian friends that watch this channel, but basically they're known for magical semen. Basically, it allows a woman to have like multiple, you know, unless it is neutralized via a medicine or it is scooped out in some sort of way. They're homeless at this point and have no place to go. So this woman, Madame Allegra, or whatever her name is, decides to hire them to be in service of other people, saying that she'll give them shelter, food, and that they will be paid half of whatever people pay to spend the evening with them, if you get my drift. And they fall for it and they go to Everton thinking that they will be taken care of. So fast forward many, many years later, you have Eve, who is an older human who is still holding the V card and decides that she wants to spend credits to no longer have that issue with one of the Krave, which happens to be Khiva. That's the first book, called Kraving Khiva. And you know, they go through their first night together. She doesn't think much of it, but then later finds out that they are actually not being paid for their services correctly. She pays like 450 credits for the evening and finds out that instead of receiving half the credits for themselves to be taken care of and develop their own life and to buy things for themselves, they're giving 1 credit for the evening. They are basically being enslaved by this woman. If they do not perform the way she wants them to, they are beaten. They are not treated well. They are actually being abused. And because they do not hold any power in Everton, they're considered not as important of a species there. They have no money for themselves. They have no home planet. And their species is almost extinct, at least as far as they know. They don't think there's very many Krave left. They have just kind of been enslaved by this woman. Well, Eve ends up realizing like this is horrible and how is it that no one knows this? So she makes it her mission to free the Krave from this woman to get them off to a neutral planet where they can then live their lives and be free. So obviously her and Khiva fall in love. And, you know, you can already guess, being that there's a whole series of these, that they do eventually get off of Everton and move on to a neutral planet. So she's able to free him. The rest of these books are then the people following. So in the next book, book 28, which was Prince of Firestones, this is sort of a shorter book that also is Khiva and Eve. This follows them on the planet of Dumera. Is it a planet or a colony? I think it's a planet of Dumera, which is a neutral planet where they're starting a new life. They are still trying to figure out how to live together on a new planet. It's kind of like what happens to them after the first book, and then also trying to figure out how to free the other people that are still being enslaved by this woman, and how to free the rest of the Krave from this brothel that has them enslaved. Then book 3 is Kraving Dravka. This is the story of Dravka and Valerie. You meet the two of them in the first book, where Valerie is actually the niece of Madame Allegra, and is also being mistreated. She is basically being enslaved in a different way, although she's a human and has a few more comings and goings. She also has a lot of things hanging over her head. Her aunt is hanging over her head. She's being mistreated as well. She's in love with Dravka, who's one of the Krave. They've been in love for years. This is about them finally admitting their love for each other and doing what they can do to free themselves from this slavery that he's in, and them getting help from Khiva and Eve to escape to Demera and start a life outside of this brothel. And then the fourth book is another member of the Krave, which is Tavak. It's called Craving Tavak. This is a story of him and Stella. Out of all the books, I think this book is the one that, the last two, Dravka had a lot of the not unrequited love, but like the we love each other and can't be together emotional things. But then this book really had the getting past abuse sort of thing. So Tavak has a lot of trauma from what he's been through. He feels dirty. He feels like he's not good. He feels like, you know, my entire life I've never been able to choose who I want to be with. I was being forced to perform, otherwise I would be beaten, and he doesn't know how to be with someone because he wants to be with someone in a relationship. So there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of emotional baggage that he carries, and to try to see him develop a relationship with Stella, like this book was actually very deep, and it really touches on a lot of like past abuse and trauma and how you process that and how you can move forward in a relationship with someone else. So I think she did a really good job addressing some of that in a, you know, sci-fi romance, lighter kind of way, but still had enough depth to it where it was a really good book. So I was actually excited. Right now, there's only 4 books out. There is still one Krave that doesn't have a mate yet. So I'll be really interested in seeing if she decides to do that person's book and if there's any other Krave that she's going to introduce into the world, because I really enjoy this book for this just being like what I thought was going to be a quick sci-fi romance read, something fun to try because my friend said it was good. I was really impressed with like how deep these stories are, because they could totally just be like nasty sci-fi crazy romance, but it's actually like there's a lot of emotional depth to the stories. So if you're like, I don't know if I like sci-fi romance, try these, because I don't like sci-fi romance either, and I really like these ones. In fact, I like these ones to the point where I think I will check out other works by Zoey Draven. So we will see. And there you go. There is 30 books for the month of October. I told you this was going to be a long video. We were here for a minute. All right, guys, let me know what was your favorite book that you read in October. Leave me a comment below. Tell me all about it so I can check it out. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.